Let's just check and see if that stream went live. Hopefully it did. Let's see. Yep. Looks like we're good. Okay. I'm gonna close that page. I'll hop over here real quick. Put that guy up. And say, hey guys, and welcome to a solo video from me. I probably should have adjusted my camera frame. Do not mind the mess over here. Those are my rabbit's chew toys. He likes to chew on cardboard and paper, so I've given him appropriate paper that he can chew on. This is just a trash bag because I am trash. Welcome to the stream. So today I wanted to... okay, here's the timeline of events. Yesterday I went to go do a video where I talked about the long list of the Man Booker International Prize, or rather the Booker International Prize, or the International Booker Prize, whatever order those words need to go in. Booker International is probably, I think, what it is correctly. International Booker? Who knows? I have the webpage open, but can I be bothered to look at it? No. And then I went to the webpage and I saw that the shortlist was being announced today, and I went, well, I might as well do that tomorrow when the shortlist is announced instead of publishing a video where I talk about the long list the day before the shortlist is announced. Feels like bad timing, so I waited a day, and now we're doing a live stream because I can't be bothered to film and edit a whole video and upload it today. I'm just gonna do a live stream, and it will be what it is. So with that being said, let's go look at that webpage. A transition over here into showing the webpage. Ooh, professional streaming. Ooh. Let's see this. All right. International Booker Prize 2021. The shortlist today. Shortlist authors and translators. Here is the shortlist. Where is my notebook? Having my notebook ready would have been the smart thing to do. I guess I'm just going to grab my sticky notes and write these down that way. Grab one of my pens. We have At Night All Blood is Black. Blood is black. The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. When We Cease to Understand the World. Next. Boop. The Employees. In Memory of Memory. And The War of the Poor. That's it, correct? That'll just go back to the beginning. Yes. Okay. So, previously, Gretchen and I had looked at the long list because we have on our joint buddy read challenge, one of the challenges that we decided on, that is a challenge for me, was to read a book that was translated into English, and I always look at the Booker Prize choices, so we went there to look and see what they had chosen. We picked up The Perfect Nine by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who did not make it onto the short list, but we are still planning to read and review this probably for next month, just so folks are aware. That is something that we are planning to do. Sad to see that this wasn't on the list, but I think that it'll be worth reading anyway. Reading. This one is an epic poem about a bunch of sisters who have to travel up a mountain, and there's suitors following them, if I'm not wrong. Yes. Mythology, folklore. It's got a lot of feminism stuff in it. I also was interested in this because it's a book that was translated by the author themselves, so I think that that's a completely unique experience. Usually it's another person who's translating the author, not the author themselves, so that will be interesting to read and talk about on the channel, but that guy didn't make it, so let's look at the ones that did. I'll let you know that I only briefly looked at the descriptions for all of these. So if I pull up Storygraph, which I think I have open already here, actually. Yes. And I look up At Night, All Blood is Black. We can look at that. This is the correct one, right? And I'm gonna show this. Yes, okay, so he's a Senegalese man who, never before having left his village, finds himself fighting as a so-called chocolate soldier with the French army during World War I, when his friend Mademba Diop in the same regiment is seriously injured in battle. Diop begs Alpha to kill him and spare him the pain of a long and agonizing death in no man's land. Unable to commit to this mercy killing, madness creeps into Alpha's mind as he comes to see this refusal as a cruel moment of cowardice. Anxious to avenge the death of his friend and find forgiveness for himself, he begins a macabre ritual. Every night he sneaks across enemy lines to find and murder a blue-eyed German soldier, and every night he returns to base unharmed with the German's severed hand. At first, his comrades look at Alpha's deeds with admiration, but soon rumors begin to circulate that this super soldier isn't a hero, but a sorcerer, a soul eater. Plans are hatched to get Alpha away from the front and to separate him from his growing collection of hands. But how does one reason with a demon, and how far will Alpha go to make amends to his dead friend? Peppered with bullets and black magic, this remarkable novel fills in a forgotten chapter in the history of World War I, blending oral storytelling traditions with the gritty day-to-day journalistic horror of life in the trenches. David Diop's At Night, All Blood is Black is a dazzling tale of a man's descent into madness. That sounds great, except for the fact that I struggle with war books. The death, destruction, and general, dark mood of war books makes them a no-go for me most of the time. I have to have a lot of people telling me that I in particular will really like this book for me to pick it up. That it does not mean that it is not a great book and is not worthy to be on this short list. It just means it's not a book that I'm likely to pick up myself. But by all means, feel free to grab it. That cover is beautiful. Look at that. It's a beautiful cover. So there's the first one. Interesting. And again, boop. What's the next book there? I believe David Diop is the author and Anna Machavakis is the translator on that. Let me double check that. I'm right there and I don't have them backwards. Yes, translated by Anna from French, because they're from Senegal, African Senegal, so French. The next one is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, translated by Megan McDowell from Spanish, written by Mariana Enriquez. Let's look at that. Ooh, short stories. Okay. Interesting. I don't want to open that in a second. I think I just want to open that. Yeah. Following the propulsive and mesmerizing New York Times book review, Things We Lost in the Fire, comes a new collection of singularly unsettling stories by an Argentine author who has earned comparisons to Shirley Jackson and Jorge Luis Borges. Okay, I like that. Mariana Enriquez has been critically lauded for her unconventional and sociopolitical stories of the macabre, populated by unruly teenagers, crooked witches, homeless ghosts, and hungry women. They walk the uneasy line between urban realism and horror. The stories in her next collection are terrifying as they are socially conscious and press into being the unspoken fetish illness, the female body, the darkness of human history with unsettling urgency. A woman is sexually obsessed with the human heart, a lost rotting baby crawls out of a backyard and into a bedroom. A pair of teenage girls can't let go of their idol. An entire neighborhood is cursed to death by a question of morality they fail to answer correctly. Written against the backdrop of contemporary Argentina and with resounding tenderness towards those in pain, in fear, and in limbo, this new collection from one of Argentina's most exciting writers finds Enriquez at her most sophisticated and most chilling. As you can see, I already marked this as to read when I was looking at the long list. This is one that I definitely want to get and have a copy of for sure. I believe that it has been published previously in the US, like it's been here for a little while, but because this was the first year that it was published in the UK, which then made it applicable to the Booker International Prize, that's why that one's on the list. And even though it's, I think, slightly older here in the United States, I'm not entirely positive on that, but I think that that's the case. It's definitely one that I want to pick up. A lot of the translated fiction that I read is Latin American based, so this is right up my alley here. It's also short stories. I love Borges. I like Shirley Jackson, so I don't know how this could lose to me. I haven't read it myself, so I can't talk about whether or not, it's fitting to be on the shortlist, but that's interesting. I'm glad that it got through. Obviously, it was one that I was interested in when I looked at the long list previously, so that's a good one. All right. Also, look at this cover. The, UK cover. That's terrifying. I love it. I wish that's, no offense to this cover. It's fine. But, look at this. What the heck? You guys sometimes get better covers than we do. Oh, goodness. All right. When we cease to understand the world. Translated by Adrian Nathan West from Spanish. Written by Benjamin Labatut. Labatut. Let's see. When we cease to understand the world. Albert Einstein opens a letter sent to him from the Eastern Front of World War I. Guys, it's another war book. Oh, no. Inside, he finds the first exact solution to the equations of general relativity, unaware that it contains a monster that could destroy his life's work. The great mathematician Alexander Grothendieck tunnels so deeply into abstraction that he tries to cut all ties with the world, terrified of the horror his discoveries might cause. Erwin Schrödinger and Werner Heisenberg battle over the soul of physics after creating two equivalent yet opposed versions of quantum mechanics. Their fight will tear the very fabric of reality, revealing a world stranger than they could have ever imagined. Using extraordinary, epic-defining moments from the history of science, Benjamin Labatut plunges us into exhilarating territory between fact and fiction, progress and destruction, genius and madness. So, it wasn't a workbook. I lied. It was about science, which actually interests me more than I thought that it would. So I'm going to add that to my to read as well, because that's interesting. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially with all of the issues that America has been having around the vaccine, all of the vaccine hesitancy, something that explores the interaction that people have with science and how we make discoveries in science that feel like they shatter our knowledge of the world, because we've come to believe that, the way that things have always been is true, the way that this has been is true, and then something comes along and they're like, oh, actually, this is what it is, and everything that you thought was true then gets erased, but that's not really how it works, it's just how it feels. So yeah, interesting to look at the way that, something that is sort of normal now, the theory of relativity, that wasn't always how things worked. Like quantum mechanics, the way that they are to be known now, that's not always how it was viewed. So, yeah, definitely something interesting. One that I missed my first time looking through, but something that I think that I would be interested in reading for sure. Let's look at the next one. The Employees. Translated from Danish by Martin Aitken. Written by Olga Raven. Oh, of course, it's going to give me a bunch of things before the one that I want. There it is. A workplace novel of the 22nd century, which I guess is next century, right? That's sci-fi, right? The near-distant future, millions of kilometers from Earth, the crew of the 6,000 ship consists of those who were born and those who were created, those who will die and those who will not. When the ship takes on a number of strange objects from the planet New Discovery, the crew is perplexed to find itself becoming deeply attached to them, and human and humanoid employees alike find themselves longing for the same things, warmth and intimacy. Loved ones who have passed our shared faraway Earth, which now only persists in memory. Gradually, the crew members come to see themselves in a new light, and each employee is compelled to ask themselves whether their work can carry on as before, and what it means to be truly alive. Structured as a series of witness statements compiled by a workplace commission, Raven's crackling prose is as chilling as it is moving, as exhilarating as it is foreboding. Racked by all kinds of longing, the employees probes into what is meant to be human, emotionally and ontologically, while simultaneously delivering an overdue critique of a life governed by work and the logic of productivity. I'm going to add that to my to-read list as well. Another one that I didn't look into these all very well when I first looked at the list. I kind of picked and chose which ones looked interesting to me, or authors that I recognized, because there are some names in the long list that I recognized, as someone who just keeps an eye and ear out for translation. I like science fiction. I have not read a lot of science fiction. When I do SFF, I tend to lean more towards the fantasy side, and I think that this might be an interesting one to look a little bit closer at, especially because there is a lot of discourse here in America about how our work ethic is broken. We work ourselves to death with very little time off. People feel guilty using sick time. Capitalism here has dug its roots in so deep that like our entire identities are carved around our success and work rather than anything else. So I think that's true in a lot of the world, not just here, but I know that it's perhaps especially true here as well. So an interesting take on that, I assume. Interesting to look at. In Memory of Memory. Translated by Sasha Dugdale from the Russian, written by Maria Stepanova. Let me see here. In Memory of Memory. Another one where there's a bunch of things above it in Storygraph. With the death of her aunt, the narrator is left to sift through an apartment full of faded photographs, old postcards, letters, diaries, and heaps of souvenirs, a withered repository of a century of life in Russia. Carefully reassembled with calm, steady hands, these shards tell the story of how a seemingly ordinary Jewish family somehow managed to survive the myriad persecutions and repressions of the last century. In dialogue with thinkers like Roland Barthes, W.G. Sebald, Susan Sontag, and Osip Mandelstam, In Memory of Memory is imbued with rare intellectual curiosity and a wonderfully soft-spoken poetic voice, dipping into various genres, essay, fiction, memoir, travelogue, and history. Stepanova assembles a vast panorama of ideas and personalities and offers a bold exploration of cultural and personal memory. Sorry, heaps of souvenirs, a withered repository of century of life in Russia. Is this a memoir? It's in nonfiction, essays, history, memoir. Okay, so it is a memoir. The others, I believe, up until now have all been fiction, so that's interesting. I don't read a lot of memoir, but I have been wanting to read more books that don't center Christian-centric characters or people. So this might be one to think about. I'll add it to my to-read because I have nothing against it. It's perhaps not something that would jump out to me as much as some of the other ones, mostly just because I am mainly a fiction reader. But that definitely is interesting to think about, especially for Eastern European Jews, I'm sure, that looking back on that century of of history is a bit painful, I'm sure. Yeah, alright, interesting. I may have the same issues with that as I have with war books because it just in general is a bit dark in tone. My brain hasn't been wanting that, but you never know. The War of the Poor, translated from the French by Marc Polizzotti and written by Eric Vouillard. That might have been really bad French. I don't speak French. I'm sorry. War of the Poor. From the award-winning author of The Order of the Day, a powerful account of the German Peasants' War that shows striking parallels to class conflicts of our time. In the 16th century, the Protestant Reformation launched an attack on privilege in the Catholic Church, but it rapidly became an established bourgeois authority itself. Rural laborers and the urban poor, who were still being promised equality in heaven, began to question why they shouldn't have the equality here and now on earth. There ensued a furious struggle between the powerful, the comfortable Protestants, and the others, the wretched. They were led by a number of theologians. Theologians? That one sounds right. Theologians, one of whom has left his mark on history through his determination and sheer energy. His name was Thomas M. Nitzer, and he set Germany on fire. The War of the Poor recounts his story that of an insurrection through the world. In his characteristically bold cinematic style, Eric Vouillard draws insights from this revolt from nearly 500 years ago, which remains shockingly relevant to the dire inequalities we face today. This one is history and nonfiction. So, this might be more up Gretchen's alley than it is mine, because I'm not a big history person, and she is, but it is not American history, although I know she doesn't focus solely on American history. I know that she's just right now really into an American history and politics kick. This might be something that's more up her alley if she should choose to read it. Discussions of changes in the Christian church in general, I do find interesting, mostly because it's pretty quick and easy for like folks who follow Christianity to forget that things have changed, and they have changed multiple times over, the years. And I do know that about every 500 years there's a pretty drastic change in certain things, and I heard a theology historian talking about how currently we're due for a major turnover and reworking of Christianity and how we view it, and how people practice it, especially with all of the upheaval that they're having currently and all of the people who are leaving the church. There's a mass exodus of people just leaving the church and losing their faith. All churches, not just, Protestantism or Catholicism. There's all people are slowly trickling away from the church. Young people don't seem to be connecting with it in the same way. So that's interesting to look at this sort of last time that there has been a giant upheaval. I do also find class conscious things interesting, so it could be interesting there. But again, I'm more of a fiction reader than a nonfiction reader, and history is definitely not, when I do read nonfiction, history is definitely not where I go. So it's probably not one that I'm going to pick up myself. But out of all of these, I'd be interested to hear if anybody has read any of them yet, and also what you guys thought of them. did you look at the long list, and did any of you like think other books should have been on there? Obviously, Gretchen and I looked at the list, and both of us had picked this as one of our The Perfect Nine as one of our interests, like of the books that we read and saw. It was one that that intrigued us. It captured both of our interest, which is why we chose to read it together to talk about. Also, it's relatively short and it's written in verse, which makes it a little bit easier to read and talk about as well. That's not the only reason that we picked it up, though. Like, the topic of it sounded interesting to us. But I would be intrigued to hear if anybody else has any thoughts. If you would read any of these, which of those would you read? Has anybody read some of the previous Booker options? I have a couple from last year's Booker on my shelves that I still haven't read because I didn't read a lot last year. But I have read some from the previous years as well. And, any translation people, were there any translation books that came out in the last year that, think should have been on the list but didn't make it? Or came out in America and they didn't come out in the UK, so obviously they wouldn't have been on that list because these are books that came out in the UK. Any of those that we might see in the future on one of the future Booker international lists. I wonder what any of that would be like. So, yeah. I hope you guys are having lovely lives. I just wanted to take a look and see what the shortlist was. I'm not planning to read all of them. Obviously, some of those aren't interesting to me, but I may pick up and read some of them. I think out of any of them, obviously from the long list, going to be reading The Perfect Nine. But I think that the book of short stories is the one that I am most likely to read. The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez, translated by Megan McDowell, I think is the one that I would be most interested in personally as a reader, and with my own interests, because again, I read a lot of books from Latin America. I like magical realism, which is a major theme in Latin American. I like horror. There was some horror elements in there. It just seems like it fits my personal taste the most out of all of them. So yeah, if I were to read and review any of them, I think that one probably would be the one to make the list. But if you want to hear my thoughts or Gretchen's thoughts on any of those other ones, let us know in the comments down below so that we can do that, because we take that into account. What you guys might want to hear us talk about, we do take that into account when we pick books that we are going to read. But again, yeah, I hope you guys are having a good time. I will talk to you again soon. We'll see you soon.